For free in-town delivery daily. Family-owned and community-focused since 1945.
And by
SETI's Ace Hardware.
SETI's Ace Hardware is now open for business in the Garden Center space at 309 East Main Avenue in Chewelah. Carrying hardware essentials, name brand tools, a range of pet and livestock products, paint, and more. SETI's Ace Hardware would like to thank the community and local businesses for their continued support. SETI's Ace Hardware, open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Sundays from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m.
Ace, the helpful place.
Listen in as the Chewelah Arts Guild and KCHW 102.7 bring you Artists on the Air, here to present their local flair.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is myself, Chuck Ritchie, and I am here with our lovely host of this show, Artists on the Air, Diane Evans, here representing the Chewelah Arts Guild. We've got Taste of Chewelah coming up this Thursday. It's happening this week. Those tickets are sold out. So, unfortunately, if you haven't gotten those yet, maybe you can find a scalper out on the street. But we have here Bob Swidergal. He is one of the artists that has donated some work to the art auction afterwards. And we have Diane Evans here to tell us all about it. Take it away, Diane.
Well, really, I'm just going to start the conversation. I think Bob's going to tell us all about it. But I'm glad to be back today, Chuck, to pick up the momentum here for Taste of Chewelah that's happening on Thursday, 2 days from now, tomorrow and Thursday. Next day is Taste of Chewelah. And a big part of Taste of Chewelah, besides walking around getting the signature small plates from the restaurants, is the auction at the brewery. And we have over 61 pieces this year. And one of the really incredible pieces we have is from Bob Swidergal. He's a local glass blower here. So welcome, everyone. The preparations for this show came about because we have so many incredible local artists. And this idea has evolved over the years as I'm getting to know the local artists and occasionally, actually sometimes frequently, asking our artists for donations and feeling gratitude for their generosity. A twinge of feeling more than gratitude recently turned into asking the question, how do we, the Chewelah Arts Guild, give back to these artists? How do we honor and promote them? And here we are with Artists on the Air. It is our intention with this program to promote and honor, in a small way, a sampling of artists who have supported our efforts along the way. So this afternoon, I'm so happy to visit with Bob Swidergal. I don't know how long I've known Bob, but I've known him for a while. Years ago, I bought a vase at a fundraiser. I think the most beautiful vase I've ever seen. And I bought it for a gift and gave it away. And I still think about it. I've talked to Bob about it. It was yellow, and it started at the bottom, and it kind of bloomed up on the top. And it was just a beautiful vase. So, and I have other pieces of Bob's too. So here we are this afternoon, Bob, to promote you and honor you and let you tell us all about yourself. So let's start with that. Who are you, Bob? How'd you get here? What's your story?
Oh, well, hello. What's my story?
Yeah.
That's a tough one, you know. Being 75 years old, the story gets long. It's very long. But in 1995, my wife and I moved here with our youngsters from Seattle, and we were able to find a house just outside of Waits Lake over there in Valley. And it was a great place to raise our kids.
Yeah.
You know, was a place we could afford. That's why we were moving out of Seattle. At that time, Seattle was still fairly reasonable. You know, it was a fairly reasonable place to live. It wasn't overcrowded. The prices for housing and so forth were, you were able to still manage, on a blue collar worker's salary, that kind of thing. But we were looking for a little bit more, and we kept looking for a place that we could afford. Took us 4 years, but having 3 youngsters that were growing, and the house that we had in Seattle was just over 1,000 square feet. And of course, it wasn't difficult for me to understand that, hey, as the kids get bigger, you need more room. And so our path led us to come here to Stevens County and see this place there that we were able to purchase just up above Waste Lake. Mm-hmm. That's how I got here.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
We're glad you're here.
I think affordability is probably a big aspect of what brought us here too.
Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. Yep, important. Was real important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how long have you been blowing glass, Bob?
I started working with the hot glass in 1977 as a student at Southern Illinois University. That's where I got my art degree. I also achieved a political science degree there. So I have these 2 different degrees, but the fact that they had this program for blowing glass was pretty much in its infancy. The glass blowing is a part of what's become known as the studio glass movement. Over the years, I don't know, how do I get into this? The history of glass is over 4,000 years old, okay? And it takes a lot of energy. You got to get 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit or more to melt glass, that kind of thing. But during the early 1920s and late 19-teens, the glass industry changed a lot because it became very mechanical. And all of the glass blowers, of course, lost their jobs because everything went to machines. I think we've all heard and recognized depression glass, and that was the beginning of being able to make all of this nice glassware, but using machines and getting it mechanized so that the glass blowers weren't really needed, especially here in the United States. Speed up to the 1960s, the mid-1960s, and an individual named Harvey Littleton was a ceramic teacher at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Now, Harvey Littleton grew up in a town called Corning, New York. Mm-hmm. Lots of us are familiar with the term Corning in building materials and so forth. Corning became a very significant place for glass blowing as well as doing the mechanical glass work. In the 1940s, perhaps, a big shift took place with the Corning folks because they realized the need for research with glass. And they started hiring physicists and scientists to examine and work with the material to make different things happen, okay? Corning became very well known for making TV tubes and TV set tubes, when in 1950s as things progressed and TV started to take over communication for our United States. Corning, New York, they had figured out how to do those things to make these big TV tubes to make our TVs work. And the research just continued from there. They were involved in lots of different things that moved on to being what we use for communication today is the fiber optic cable. Okay, that's an invention from the Corning folks there in Corning, New York. But anyway, they've got long lists of successful inventions that they came up with. But Harvey Littleton grew up in that town. His dad was a physicist. A quick little sidelight was his dad was working on glass containers to hold battery acid. Okay, and it was going to be a significant part of what they were doing. Harvey's mom complained to her husband, Harvey's dad, one day that as she was trying to make different kinds of cakes and things in the oven, the oven pans would always stick. And Harvey's dad told her one day, she says, I'm working on this idea at the lab. Let me see if this might help you. And he brought one of these containers home. She used it just like she would have with a baking pan, and it didn't stick. And she used it over and over and over again, and she could put it in the oven and, set it aside or take it from the refrigerator and put it in the oven, and it wouldn't break. Mm-hmm. And that became Pyrex glass. And so all of the different Pyrex utensils that we use in the kitchen, they're a part of Harvey's dad and mom working together to come up with a useful idea for this peculiar invention. But anyway, back to Harvey. He became a ceramics teacher and with a job at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. But because of his background, he was really interested to know if a small glass blowing facility could be built. Glass making was always done in a factory. It takes so much energy, so much heat to be able to melt glass that if you're going to melt a little, you might as well melt a lot. Okay, mm-hmm. And I'm talking about 20-ton furnaces, 30-ton, 50-ton furnaces, and so to be able to work with the material, you had to be able to be in the factory. And of course, that's not conducive at all for an individual who's trying to make something artistic. Now, the very beginnings of glass, 4,000 years ago, glass was just an artistic material, and they would melt quantities of it and have different kinds of molds made, and then they would generally cast into these different molds to make whatever it was that they were working on, the head of a pharaoh or a sphinx or some other kind of deity, what have you. Harvey wanted to see if he could change that whole dynamic. And with the help of another glass scientist, Dominic Labino, who worked for a different glass outfit from Toledo, Ohio, they got to make a little furnace that would hold maybe 50 pounds. And they were able to bring the heat and develop a glass formula that would melt and be useful, because glass is kind of like metal. And if someone was to tell you, I'm going to make some jewelry with some metal, and you would want to question, well, what kind of metal are you using? Tin, silver, gold, copper? Glass is similar because all glass is not the same. And so you need to understand the material and how to mix the formula, the different ingredients that it takes to make the kind of glass that you want to have to develop the items that you want to make. Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't know, we're lost somewhere in this meander that I've done here. How do I want to go on forward here? What do I want to...
Well, I actually have a question about that, if I could. Mm-hmm. I know, or not really a question, but just something to add to that. I know even the same glass with different colors, the qualities of the coloring that goes in the glass can make it, slightly different temperature, and you have to be careful when you're working with it based on the color even that you're working with, correct?
That is correct, Chuck. A lot of that has to do not necessarily just with the color, but with the ingredients, the different minerals and metal oxides that are added to the formula to make the color.
Yeah.
Okay. And some of them heat up a little more quickly, and some of them are slower to heat up. And as a glass maker, you get to work with that and try to start to understand the dialogue that it takes if you want to combine those different colors. We have a thing over there on the table that might demonstrate that. If you want to grab that, the multicolored cup. And, yep, that kind of demonstrates that the colors can be worked together and different things can happen.
Go ahead and keep holding that up there. I'm gonna zoom in. Oops, I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in on it just a hair here. If I can get up to the right software here, there we go. Up a little bit. Hold it up a little bit higher. There we go. Yeah. See if you can zoom in and give us a little twirl for the people watching on Facebook here and online.
There you go. Yep.
There you go.
So this is a kind of a celebratory goblet, you know.
Yeah.
I made this, I don't know, 30, 35 years ago. I don't know. He's been around for a while. There's a mate to it, but I figured I only better bring one just for a show and tell here this afternoon. But yeah, this is the different kind of colors, and you can work them together. But depending on the size and the different shapes that you want to work with, you have to kind of develop that understanding of how those colors are going to blend together to create what it is you're looking to create. Yep. It can be difficult sometimes, and there's different ways. This is all surface. If the audience doesn't get to see that, but there's a lot of texture on this piece here, and it's because the color is all on the surface. It's not inside. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, when you'll make glass, if you want a color, a solid color, you incorporate that color early on in the process, and then you wind up collecting clear glass over it in different layers. And of course, when the bubble is inflated, you don't get to see all those layers. You just get to see the color. Mm-hmm. But as we can move on to something else, you know, the different aspects of what we're talking about here this afternoon. You know, one of the things that I feel close to is that where I live was originally 160 acre. I'm having a senior moment here. You know, where the original owners homesteaded. That's what I wanted to say. Okay. It was a 160 acre homestead. Okay. This homestead happens to be at the foot of Lane Mountain. Lane Mountain happens to be a mountain of silica sand, the main ingredient for making glass. When we bought our house, and I was totally unaware that that was the case, but you know, after we had been there 4 or 5 months, I noticed a bag of Lane Mountain sand at the glass studio that I was working at, and you probably have never seen one of these bags, but a bag of Lane Mountain sand has a big line drawing on the very front of it, and it's a mountain and a few small farm buildings. That happens to be the view out my front door. Uh-huh. And I was standing, you know, I was standing in the shop there working, and got to looking at that bag, and I'm going, why does that look so familiar, you know? And then it said Lane Mountain sand, silica sand, Valley, Washington. I went, man, that's where I live. That's the view out my front door, you know? Was kind of one of those interesting happenstance.
Yeah, it's almost magical.
Almost magical.
Almost magical.
That's how that works. Yep.
Yeah.
So before the show, we had a quick discussion about how the closest glass blowing studio is in Seattle. It seems to me that Lane Mountain, where the sand comes from, if somebody happened to live on Lane Mountain and wants to put in a glass blowing studio on their property, you know, I might know a guy.
Well, good one, Chuck. You know, Lane Mountain is very industrially oriented, and they sell a lot of sand to the glass manufacturers, glass companies on the West Coast. They have a good supply of it until just recently, you know, like maybe last 5 years or so. The world's largest stained glass maker was in Woodinville, Washington. Yeah, Spectrum Glass. They bought their sand from Lane Mountain. And they would make
Okay.
all these beautiful colored glass panels, glass sheets, yep, with the Lane Mountain glass. It takes other ingredients, okay, to make glass.
Yeah.
And of course, different colors or require different oxides and things like that. But yep, it's the beginning, that's for sure. Yeah.
So, Bob, would you say that you just kind of took to glass making? I mean, you didn't. You got an art degree, and maybe were specifically interested in making glass, but you didn't. You didn't go in the direction of painting, or go in the direction of ceramics, or go in the direction of sculpture with clay. So, do you think you just kind of took to glass making?
You know, do we want to get into another
Yes.
happenstance?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Let's see. I guess I should start this one at the beginning.
Okay.
Okay. 75 years ago, okay, am the son of first generation Polish immigrants. My grandparents on both sides were immigrants from Poland. Okay. My mother and my father are both, they were both as Polish as could be, 100% Polish. One of the things that they would do, traditional things that they would do on the first birthday of a child, before they presented the child with a birthday cake, right, they would bring a tray. And on this tray would be a rosary, a silver dollar, and a shot glass. And the first thing that the youngster would touch would indicate where that youngster was going to be headed in their life, okay? Yep. I chose the shot glass. You know, with stories that I heard, you know, before from my folks, but also from, you know, my aunts and that kind of thing, you know, the family folks who do that historical kind of stuff. And the peculiar part of it is that as a young teenager, when I graduated from elementary school, right, I wound up going to what was basically a monastery for 2 years. And so, you know, the shot glass didn't quite fit with the monastery, but of course, hey, you know, those priests, they hit that wine every day, first thing in the morning, you know, that kind of stuff. And so it was like, well, okay, you know, it follows through. But eventually what it really involved was something that caught my eye, okay? While I was in grammar school, I became an altar boy. And I did altar boy till I was 14 or 15, you know. And of course, I got to see different churches, but I was always, you know, with the churches, there's always that stained glass. And I was always, of course, enamored with it. As a boy, reading boy magazines, Boy's Life and Field and Stream and those kinds of magazines, at the very back, there were always these want ads. And one of the littlest want ads was learn stained glass. And an outfit called Whitmore Durgan in, I think it's Boston, but in Massachusetts, they would run their little ad, you know, hey, send us $10 and we'll send you a starter kit. And I always wanted to do that, but I never did. And like probably never had $10 to just kind of send their way. But when I was about 24, 25, well, I had that $10. And so I sent them the money and they sent me a starter kit. And so I started to do stained glass by myself. There was a little booklet in there. There was a number of pieces of colored glass. They sent you some lead cane, which is the material that goes in between the different pieces that you put together. And, you know, and some solder and, you know, instruction. And I started doing those kinds of things and making little panels and enjoying it. It was like, oh yeah, this is cool, you know. And so I was doing it as a hobby. I returned to college after being in the military and kind of running loose for a while. And I had graduated a bit from doing the two-dimensional flat panels with the lead cane to doing three-dimensional things with the copper foil method. That's the method that Louis Tiffany kind of gets credit for being the innovator of, and to make lampshades and things like that. I wasn't really too interested in lampshades, but I started doing three-dimensional work with glass pieces and the copper foil.
And that's where you wrap the copper around
At
slightly
the edge.
around the edges?
Yeah, and then solder them together.
Yeah.
Right. One of my buddies in college there, he was over visiting one day, and he got to see some of these things that I had put together, and he was admiring them. He goes, "Hey, you know, they have a glass blowing class over there in the art department. You should go check it out." Well, I did, and the next semester when it rolled around, I had my name in there to be a glass blowing student. The instructor was reticent because I was already a senior, not in artistic discipline. Mm-hmm. I was working on my political science degree, but I'd keep showing up. There's only so many spots available, and he knew that, and he knew how attractive it could be for people to want to do this, but you got to be able to stand the heat to be a glass blower, because the furnace that you're hugging up to is at over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, mm-hmm. And when you open that door, that dragon is blowing flames out at you. And because I was persistent, when the first kind of group thinned out and said, "No, I can't do this," and the semester was still early, he said, "Okay, we'll let you give it a try." And that was it. I was there. Let's do this.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
So do you remember, I know I took a glass blowing class in Seattle a couple of years ago. We were just there visiting, just a quick one day thing. I'm assuming you probably remember the very first time you had that mouthpiece in your mouth and you blew and the glass did what you wanted it to. I had goosebumps. It went down the back of my neck, down my spine. I got chills when that happened, even in that hot room. It was just the most amazing, wonderful feeling. Do you remember your first time blowing glass?
It's there's a lot of dust on that path. A lot of dust. So I can't really say that I remember, but yeah, it was, I'm in, I'm all in. Let's do this, and I finished my political science degree and began taking art classes because they told me, "Hey, you're going to be serious about this. You got to do this and that and have all these different things." It's like, yeah, okay, whatever it takes, that kind of thing.
Of course, I was experiencing some severe nerve damage at the time, so a lot of things gave me tinglies down my spine. It didn't take much.
Well, I want the audience to know that there is a vase that Bob donated to the auction, and you can come to the brewery and see it. It's a beautiful vase. So the vase is what, Bob, maybe 12 inches high?
Yeah, a little bit more maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe 8 inches diameter on the top.
I think it's like 5 or 5.5 or something, yeah.
So let's just use that as an example. How long would it take you to blow that piece?
How long? Well, most of it depends on your experience, okay? Uh-huh. The hotter you can work the material, the quicker it'll go along. And if you don't have a lot of experience, oftentimes you're not working the material as hot as you probably should. Mm-hmm. But you do a couple of gathers. That's what you refer to as collecting the glass, the hot glass, out of the furnace on the end of the blowpipe. You make a gather. And then you don't look to collect all the glass you need at once. You do it in steps, in increments. And so you start with a little bit and initiate a bubble. You use some fun science to do that. because you can trap air into the blowpipe, and because the end is so hot with that 2,000 degree glass, that heat forces the air to expand, and you create a little bubble at the end of the blowpipe without having to do a lot of puffing, okay? But you start that bubble, you let it cool a bit so that it's stable, and then you go back in and you collect a little bit more glass. And you collect a little bit more glass. Now, depending on how you're going to be decorating and what it is you're looking to create, develop, you're using some color, or you're using some different kinds of metal optic molds, perhaps, to create a different effect for, you know, what you're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. So that piece that you're referring to, Diane, it might have taken, I don't know, 40 minutes, less than an hour for sure.
Wow.
Okay. It has a nice big, what we like to refer to as a cookie foot, where you drop a real nice hot gather on a strong, stable table, whether it be metal or a stone, something like that. But you drop that on there and it pools up. Glass likes to be nice and round. You know, it has that way about it. And if you let that cool a little bit, it gets a little bit of integrity. And then with a bit of skill and a good eye, you're able to touch that cookie onto the very bottom of the piece that you're making. And then you have a foot. Mm-hmm. So you've got this nice stable base. And then how you ever want to direct the glass that is the bubble after that, well, that base is going to give you the stability to let it stand on its own, you know, whether you want to use that metaphorically or literally or whatever. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's shocking. 40 minutes, less than an hour. I mean, and it's thick. That glass is thick.
Yeah, it's a nice thick piece.
It's a really nice piece. Yeah, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, it worked. Yeah.
Yeah, it would look stunning with a bouquet of dahlias in it.
Yeah, well, you know, basically for the glass maker, the sunlight, you know, it's like, hey, you can have flowers in it, but, you know, just put some light on it and it'll look good by itself.
Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of how I generally look at things.
Yeah.
Well, I know somebody else I could contact to get a nice bouquet of flowers for that.
Yeah, there's several people here in town.
There are.
Yeah.
There are.
We interviewed one of them.
Mm-hmm.
We interviewed Abigail.
Yeah.
And with the Pardon My French farm.
Mm-hmm.
She grows beautiful flowers. And we interviewed her a few weeks ago.
I met her at the farmer's market.
Oh, yeah.
Probably the week after she was on the radio.
Oh, yeah.
Because I wanted to get a little bit of a grasp as to what was going to go on here, you know. So she gave me a little bit of.
Oh.
Yeah, she was delightful. She was, yeah.
She is.
Yep. Yeah. So if you're listening, Abigail, a shout out to you.
Yeah.
There you go.
We're giving her a shout out. Okay, well, you've incorporated a lot of my.
I kind of figured that's how it was going to go.
Yeah. You've done a beautiful job. You did your homework. So, are you willing to talk to us a little bit about your future studio, or should we kind of hold that potential for another time on the radio?
Perhaps. I mean, it's just in the works. You know, a glass studio is not a plug and play. There's a lot that goes on. You got to have the facility. You got to have plenty of juice. You got to have a gas hookup. There's a melting furnace, and then most glass studios will have a reheat furnace, and the reheat furnace is integral. It goes, you turn it on when you're ready to work, but your melting furnace, generally speaking, once you turn it on, it's on 24/7. The meter is running. Okay, so it's not something that you take lightly. You have to make sure that you're going to be ready to go and have a good menu of things that you want to create, because it's not necessarily the kind of thing that you sit back and What do I want to do next?
Yeah, you got to be committed.
Yep. And then there's the cooling process. When you're done making something in glass, it has to be slowly cooled, or what we refer to as annealing. And the annealer has to be available for whatever amount of time it's going to take to cool that piece slowly. There are several integral temperature points that you need to be concerned about, but it has to be able to slowly cool so that the glass doesn't suffer thermal shock. When it gets too cold too fast, it'll crack and break.
Especially if you have other pieces in the annealer with it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. That's right, Chuck. Yep.
So, Bob, have you made some mistakes? Have some of your glass broken?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure, Diane. Yep. Yeah, you know, you want to push the envelope, and there's plenty of mistakes to be made. You know, you don't necessarily have to wait till you're done making a piece. We talked about color a little bit earlier. Different colors, they don't really like to mesh or meld together, you know, and if you're unaware when you start and you start to inflate that bubble, one side wants to go really quick and the other side is really kind of retarded, you know, and I don't mean that in a negative way at all. It just moves really slowly and you don't get an even bubble. And a big part of working with the glass is you want to keep that uniformity in the bubble so that you've got control as to what's going to take place.
Yeah.
So once you've made a mistake and something's broken or is misshapen or whatever, can you reuse that glass?
Can you reuse the glass? If there's no colors involved, you can. You just break it off and let it cool, and the next time you add material to the melting furnace, or we refer to it as charge the glass, yeah, you can put that back in. But if you got colors mixed together, colors don't blend like a painter would anticipate. Okay, you don't get, you know, red and orange, and you know you get a lot of browns and ugly grays and things like that. It's not the nicest visual, you know, when you do that kind of thing, but it can be used, you know. Because of the studio glass movement that I mentioned way back early on, there are a lot of different aspects of working with the glass that people have gotten into. Slumping glass, where you take cold glass and arrange it in your artistic pattern, put it into a kiln, electric kiln, and heat it till it gets to a slumping temperature where it starts to collapse. That's like 1,300, 1,400 degrees. Sometimes 1,600, but anyway, it'll melt together and fuse. And, you know, that's a different avenue that glass makers are taking these days. It doesn't involve quite as much as having a glass blowing studio. Yep. But, you know, there are different ways to incorporate those things. Now, a point that I wanted to make was when you make a mistake, sometimes you'll go ahead and carry through with it to see what happens, because that mistake can become a technique. If you have a good dialogue with the material and you see what's going on, and why did that happen? Is it because of the color? Is it because of the glass? Is it because I wasn't cooling the glass, marvering it correctly? All those different things come into play, and if you think that the mistake is really interesting, you might want to use it again and again and again. Okay.
A happy accident.
A happy accident. Yep, Chuck, that's it.
There are no mistakes. There are happy accidents or learning experiences.
Yep. Good point.
Well, I know another aspect of your glass blowing life, Bob, is you've been on a few cruise ships and done glass blowing. So do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was a fun kind of segment of my career. The Corning Museum of Glass made an agreement with the Celebrity Cruise Line. Celebrity was creating a new, what do they call it when they make new ships? A new line of ships. They were going to be big. They were going to be the best on the market, all that kind of thing. And of course, they were looking for the unique experience for their guests, for their passengers. A couple of the top executives were collectors of glass.
Oh.
And of course, they had seen the process, and they knew how enticing and entertaining the glass blowing process was. And so they wanted to have a glass blowing studio on the cruise ship. Well, the different people that they talked to said, well, you got to be crazy, because the one thing that nobody wants on a boat is a fire. And if you're going to have fire on a boat, you're asking for trouble. So they asked around to all of their different big-time studios, the folks in Ireland and the folks in Sweden and the folks in Italy. And, they're going, nope, we're not going to do that. Nope, you don't really want to do that. It's something you want to stay away from. They even went to the man, Dale Chihuly. And Dale Chihuly was the one that told him, no, I can't do that. But he said, if anybody would do that, you need to check with the Corning Museum of Glass, because their museum is a great museum, and their connection with Corning itself may be the avenue that you want. Well, it took a couple of years of research, but the museum agreed to do the program because they would develop an electric glass blowing studio, electric melt furnace, electric reheat furnace, all that kind of stuff, so that you could have glass blowing without having fire. And so they did that. The cruise line had developed 5 ships. They wanted the glass blowing studio on each of those. And they made an agreement with the Corning Museum, but the museum stipulated that nothing that we make can be sold. We are a non-for-profit museum. We can't get into making things and selling them on the ship. And of course, that's what the cruise ship wanted. Oh yeah, you can make a piece of glass, people see it, boom, it's sold. Didn't happen. They finally agreed, like, okay, we'll do this. We won't be able to sell anything, but we'll do this. And the museum said, fine, we'll just we'll give these things away. The things that we make, these demonstrations that we do, we'll give them away to your passengers. But we can't do any selling. And so they made the agreement, and from 2008 till 2017. The connection was there for the two, and the glass blowing studios got built onto 3 of the ships, but not the last 2. After a while, those that count beans better than those that count heads said, hey, we could use that space to sell hamburgers, steaks or whatever, and it would create revenue. And, what we're doing here isn't creating revenue and all that kind of stuff that those kinds of folks get into. So that went on until 2017, like I said. And then the cruise line decided, okay, we're going to make this revenue generating event on the boat. And so the Corning folks said, okay, we're done. And when the museum said that they were done, for me, it was like, okay, I'm done. Yep. Because it was a tremendously relaxed kind of working environment to be able to do demonstrations for, countless numbers of people all over the world, literally, and have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes, to be able to dispense the different pieces, we would do little raffles, and folks would come and watch, and there was seating available and stuff, and we would hand out raffle tickets, and then after the end of our demonstrations, we might choose 3 or 4 pieces and raffle them off to whoever's in the crowd. Send somebody home smiling.
Well, I guarantee you those people probably remember that experience more than the people on the other ships remember their cheeseburger.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably right,
Yeah.
Chuck. Yep.
Yeah. So, Bob, how are you inspired to blow glass? I guess, when you go into a studio, where's your inspiration come from?
For me, Diane, it because of the way I began my whole sojourn here, okay, being a political science student, I had to pore over, countless numbers of books that had no pictures. There'd be 400, 500-page books about whatever kind of political item, but there was never any pictures. And then when I started doing the glass work, and of course the folks in the art department, well, you need to do this and that and this and that. And I started taking these other classes. It was like, gosh, this is a treat. I got an art book, and on every page there'd be some kind of a picture.
Yeah.
Like, hey, that's half of the reading right there. Okay. But I really enjoyed the cerebral part of studying the art, whether it was, early or medieval or, and antiquated or modern art, contemporary art. And so for me, the ideas are just a part of my own imagination, there are different artists that I really enjoy, and there's different techniques, there are different avenues give me inspiration, I guess, but it's like, wow, look how he did that. Can I incorporate that some way? And so I like to just kind of flail around, I guess, in that kind of maze and come up with different ideas. But simplicity is usually one of my aspects that I like to maintain, Don't get too involved, different philosophers have have come up with the sage advice that, if something's not simple, well, then there's probably something not correct about it, because nature is basically simple kinds of laws and aspects. And so for me, that's a big part of it as well. Keep it simple. KISS, right?
Yeah, exactly.
KISS. Keep it simple, stupid.
Exactly.
Would there be a possibility of you telling us what your most successful piece was?
My most successful, there is a series that I have worked on. I'm looking forward to getting back to, the Arrested Motion.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces in the Arrested Motion is called Precocity. And I've gotten lots of mileage out of it. A lot of folks, I really enjoy it. Lots of folks have positively commented about it, It has to do with a powder blue in a couple of segments and a real light pink in a third segment. Yep, that's probably the most successful. But, I have a couple of other series that I'm excited about getting back to as soon as the studio gets hot. And so, it may take a second place.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we stay tuned.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
I'm old, but I'm not stopping.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, this has sure been delightful, Bob, talking. I learned a lot. That's the thing about these artists on the air interviews. I, for one, have learned a lot from the artists. They don't come in here and just answer the questions, yes, no, or a few sentences. They all have taught us something and really talked intelligently and professionally about their art and their studies. So it's been really delightful.
Well, I'd like to give a shout out before we're done, I guess, to Karen and Gus. Hey,
Okay. Okay. They're
There
listening.
you go.
they're listening.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Good. That's wonderful. So, well, I just want to encourage our listening audience and all of your friends and family to come out for Taste of Chewela. Even if you didn't get a ticket, you can come to the auction. And the auction takes place at the brewery. The bidding starts at 5 o'clock and ends at 8:30. And you will find some beautiful pieces by many of our local artists, and quite a varied selection. So at the brewery, there'll be dessert and coffee and beer and wine and whatever else the brewery has, hop water. And then right next door is the food truck, and so it's a really fun event for the community. So I want to thank everybody for listening. I especially want to thank Bob. This actually is our last scheduled Artists on the Air. This program was conceived and started for to lead up to Taste of Chewela. But I guess Chuck and I'll see what goes from here. But
Yeah.
anyway, thank you everybody for listening, and I'll see you around town.
There you go.
Thanks for having me.
There you go. That'll do it for us. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on. We'd like to remind everybody once again that Taste of Chewela is this Thursday. Tell us again, Diane, what time the event starts.
Well, the event starts at 4:30 and it closes at 8 o'clock for those who have tickets and are running around trying to get to all the restaurants, 10 restaurants, in that period of time, getting their small plates and talking to all their friends. And it's a challenge.
There's a lot of strategery involved.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a challenge. I've done taste before when I wasn't doing the art auction, and I don't think I ever got to all the restaurants, but it's just a really fun event.
It is. It is. Well, again, thank you guys so much for coming out. Don't be shy. If you don't have a ticket, get on out there. Get on out to the art auction that's happening afterwards. You can also get out there and support our local restaurants. And you can also tune in right here tonight from 6 to 8 p.m. with Music for the Mountain. Oops, I'm sorry. It's Tuesday, not Wednesday. 6 to 9 p.m. tonight is Dr. Jazz live in the studio. Then from 9 a.m. to midnight is a soul show with Mike Canton. Don't forget to join us tomorrow morning with the morning show. It'll be myself, Sharon Ludwig, and Paula Randall joining us on our KCHW morning show. Until then, we'll see you guys later and have a great evening. Where am I? There we go. I couldn't find the button.
Listen in as the Chewela Arts Guild and KCHW 102.7 bring you artists on the air, here to present their local flair.